Republic of Kenya is a country in East Africa, with a population of more than 47.6 million in the 2019 census. Kenya is the 28th most populous country in the world, and 7th most populous in Africa. Kenya's capital and largest city is Nairobi, while its oldest and second largest city is the major port city of Mombasa, situated on Mombasa Island in the Indian Ocean and the surrounding mainland. Mombasa was the capital of the British East Africa Protectorate, which included most of what is now Kenya and southwestern Somalia. From 1889 to 1907, other important cities include Kisumu and Nakuru. Kenya is bordered by South Sudan to the northwest, Ethiopia to the north, Somalia to the east, Uganda to the west, Tanzania to the south, and the Indian Ocean to the southeast. Kenya's earliest inhabitants were hunter-gatherers, like the present-day Hadza people. According to archaeological dating of associated artifacts and skeletal material, Cushitic speakers first settled in Kenya's lowlands between 3200 and 1300 BC. A phase known as the Lowland Savanna Pastoral Neolithic, Nilotic-speaking pastoralists, ancestral to Kenya's Nilotic speakers, began migrating from present-day South Sudan into Kenya around 500 BC. Bantu people settled at the coast and the interior between 250 BC and 500 AD. European contact began in 1500 AD with the Portuguese Empire, and effective colonization of Kenya began in the 19th century during the European exploration of Africa. Modern-day Kenya emerged from a protectorate established by the British Empire in 1895 and the subsequent Kenya colony, which began in 1920. Numerous disputes between the UK and the colony led to the Mau Revolution, which began in 1952, and the Declaration of Independence in 1963. After independence, Kenya remained a member of the Commonwealth of Nations. The current constitution was adopted in 2010 and replaced the 1963 Independence Constitution. Kenya is a presidential representative democratic republic in which elected officials represent the people, and the president is the head of state and government. Kenya is a member of the United Nations, the Commonwealth, World Bank, International Monetary Fund, World Trade Organization, COMESA, International Criminal Court, as well as other international organizations. It is also a major non-NATO ally of the United States. With a GNI of 1,840, Kenya is a lower middle-income economy. Kenya's economy is the second largest in Eastern and Central Africa, after Ethiopia, with Nairobi serving as a major regional commercial hub. Agriculture is the largest sector. Tea and coffee are traditional cash crops, while fresh flowers are a fast-growing export. The service industry is also a major economic driver, particularly tourism. Kenya is a member of the East African Community Trade Bloc, though some international trade organizations categorize it as part of the Greater Horn of Africa. Africa is Kenya's largest export market. The African peoples of Kenya, who constitute virtually the entire population, are divided into three language groups: Bantu, Nilo-Saharan, and Afro-Asiatic. Bantu is by far the largest, and its speakers are mainly concentrated in the southern third of the country. The Kikuyu, Kamba, Meru, and Nika peoples occupy the fertile Central Rift Highlands, while the Luhya and Gusii inhabit the Lake Victoria Basin. Nilo-Saharan, represented by the languages of Kalenjin, Luo, Maasai, Samburu, and Turkana, is the next largest group. The rural Luo inhabit the lower parts of the Western Plateau, and the Kalenjin-speaking people occupy the higher parts of it. The Maasai are pastoral nomads in the southern region bordering Tanzania, and the related Samburu and Turkana pursue the same occupation in the arid northwest. The Afro-Asiatic peoples, who inhabit the arid and semi-arid regions of the north and northeast, constitute only a tiny fraction of Kenya's population. They are divided between the Somali, bordering Somalia, and the Oromo, bordering Ethiopia. Both groups pursue a pastoral livelihood in areas that are subject to famine, drought, and desertification. Another Afroasiatic people is the Burji, some of whom are descended from workers brought from Ethiopia in the 1930s to build roads in northern Kenya. In addition to the African population, Kenya is home to groups who immigrated there during British colonial rule. People from India and Pakistan began arriving in the 19th century. Although many left after independence, a substantial number remain in urban areas such as Kisumu, Mombasa, and Nairobi, where they engage in various business activities. European Kenyans, mostly British in origin, are the remnant of the colonial population. Their numbers were once much larger, but most emigrated at independence to southern Africa, Europe, and elsewhere. Those who remain are found in the large urban centers of Mombasa and Nairobi. Freedom of religion is guaranteed by the Constitution. More than 4/5 of the people are Christian, primarily attending Protestant or Roman Catholic churches. Christianity first came to Kenya in the 15th century through the Portuguese, but this contact ended in the 17th century. Christianity was revived at the end of the 19th century and expanded rapidly. African traditional religions have a concept of a supreme being, who is known by various names. Many syncretic faiths have arisen in which the adherents borrow from Christian traditions and African religious practices. Independent churches are numerous. One such church, the Maria Legio of Africa, is dominated by the Luo people. Muslims constitute a sizable minority and include both Sunnis and Shias. There are also small populations of Jews, Jains, Sikhs, and Baha'is in remote areas. Christian mission stations offer educational and medical facilities as well as religious ones. Since independence was achieved in 1963, Kenya's economy has contained both privately owned and state-run enterprises. Most of the country's business is in private hands, with a large amount of foreign investment, but the government also shapes the country's economic development through various regulatory powers and parastatals, or enterprises that it partly or wholly owns. The aim of this policy is to achieve economic growth and stability, generate employment, and maximize foreign earnings by achieving high levels of agricultural exports while substituting domestically produced goods for those that have been imported. For a decade after independence, this policy showed great promise as rising wages, employment, and government revenue provided the means for expanding health services, education, transportation, and communication. In an effort to decrease its dependence on volatile agricultural markets, Kenya attempted to diversify its exports in the last decade of the 20th century, adding horticultural products, clothing, cement, soda ash, and fluorspar. The country also made the export of manufactured goods, such as paper and vehicles, a priority. Domestic restrictions on imports have been removed slowly. However, and this policy has been only partially successful. Kenya's economy, which did not grow at a constant rate during the last 2 decades of the 20th century, continued to be dominated by the external market. Tourism and agricultural exports were still the major source of foreign exchange for the country. In the early 21st century, the state-run Central Bank of Kenya. There also are a large number of commercial, merchant, and foreign banks in Kenya. The Nairobi Stock Exchange, founded in 1954, is one of the largest in sub-Saharan Africa. The 2010 Constitution. Under the 2010 Constitution, the executive branch is headed by the President, who is the head of state and government, and is assisted by the Deputy President and the Cabinet. The President is elected by direct popular vote and must win more than 50% of all votes as well as at least 25% of the votes cast in each of more than half of the country's counties. The President's term is 5 years and there is a limit of 2 terms. The 2010 Constitution provides for a bicameral parliament consisting of the 68-member Senate and the 350-member National Assembly. Most Senate members are directly elected by voters in their respective counties, and 20 non-elective, and grants short-term or seasonal loans. The traditional food of Kenya is as mixed and diverse as its tribes, history, and landscapes. Each tribal area has its own specialities, but below are some of the most common Kenyan food dishes that you can sample whilst on your travels. Ugali, nyama choma, Oreo, githeri, matura, matoke, and many others. If you are thinking of visiting Africa, make sure you visit Kenya, experience their traditions, culture, and historical sites. Thanks for watching today's episode. Kindly like, comment, share, and subscribe for more videos on this channel.